Welcome back to Season 2 of Midwest Covencast Presents Weekend Reads. I'm Marilyn of Midwest Covencast. Here in the second half of Season 2, we will be making our way through Book 3 of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy or magic, which explores ceremonial magic. You can find podcast extras for this season and more at MidwestCovencast.com. I hope you enjoy this week's installment. Chapter 14, of the gods of the Gentiles and souls of the celestial bodies, and what places were consecrated in times past, and to what deities. The philosophers have maintained, as we have showed before, that the heavens and stars are divine animals, and their souls intellectual, participating of the divine mind. And they aver that some separated substances are superior, others inferior to them, as if were governing and serving, which they call intelligences and angels. Moreover, Plato himself affirmed that celestial souls are not confined to their bodies, as our souls to our bodies, but to be where they will, and also that they rejoice in the vision of God, and without any labor or pains do rule and move their bodies, and together, in moving them, do easily govern these inferior things. Therefore, they often called the souls of this kind gods, and appointed divine honors for them, and dedicated prayers and sacrifices to them, and did worship them with divine worship. And these are the gods to the which all people are attributed, concerning which Moses commanded in Deuteronomy, saying, lest perchance your eyes being lifted up to heaven, thou shouldst see the sun, the moon, and all the stars of heaven, and being turned back, should adore and worship them, to which all the nations are subjected, which are under the heaven. But the Lord Jehovah hath taken and brought you forth from the furnace of Egypt, that thou should be an hereditary people of himself. And in the same book, chapter 17, he calls the sun, moon, and stars gods, and the doctors of the Hebrews upon that place of Genesis, where it is said that Abraham gave gifts to the sons of the concubines, viz. Shemoth, Steltoma, that is strange names, but left Isaac heir of all that he possessed, say that the sons of the concubines were not in the blessing of Abraham, given to Jehovah the Most High Creator, but to strange gods and deities, but that Isaac and his seed were given to the omnipotent Jehovah, and in no part to any strange deities. Therefore they are upbraided in Deuteronomy, because they served strange gods and worshipped them they knew not, and to whom they were not given. And also Joshua knave, after that the people were brought into the land of promise, their enemies overcome, and the lots of the possessions of Israel distributed, gave the people leave to choose that God whom they would worship, saying, leave is given you this day to choose whom you will especially serve, whether the gods which your fathers served in Mesopotamia, or the gods of the Amorites, whose land you inhabit. But the people answered, we will serve the Lord Jehovah, and he shall be our God. Joshua said to them, ye cannot do it, for the Lord Jehovah is holy, strong, and jealous. But the people, persevering to serve Jehovah, he said to them, ye are witnesses yourselves, that ye have chosen for yourselves the Lord to serve him. Take away therefore strange gods out of the midst of you, and incline your hearts to the Lord God of Israel. And he erected a great stone, saying, this stone shall be for a witness, lest perhaps afterwards ye will deny and lie to the Lord your God. Therefore, the other gods to which the other nations were given were the sun, moon, 12 signs, and other celestial bodies, and divine fabrics, yet not as they were bodies, but as the soul adheres to them, and the whole militia of heaven, which Jeremy calls the Queen of Heaven, that is, the power by which the heaven is governed, viz. The soul of the world, of which Jeremy said, the sons gather sticks, and part thereof makes a fire, and the women mingle oil, that they might make a cake for the Queen of Heaven. Neither was the worship of Dolia to this queen and other celestial souls prohibited them, but of Latria only, which they that gave are reproved of the Lord. But the name of these souls or gods we have declared, but to what regions, people, and cities they were ascribed as proper and tutelar gods. Origen, Tertullian, Apuleius, Diodorus, and very many other historians partly relate to us. Therefore, all people worship their gods, and with their proper ceremonies. The Boeotians, Amphiaraus, the Africans, Mopus, the Egyptians, Osiris and Isis, the Ethiopians, who inhabit Meroe, Jupiter and Bacchus, the Arabians, Bacchus and Venus, the Scythians, Minerva, the Nocratians, Serapis, the Syrians, Atargates, and Arabians, Diaphares, the Africans, Celestis, the Nornians, Tibelenus, in Italy also by the free cities, consecration. Delventius was the god of the Crustumensians, Viridanus of the Nevensians, Icaria of the Esculians, Narja of the Volsians, Valentia of the Orticulans, Nordia of the Certinians, Curtis of the Felicians. These especially were famous. The Latians did adore with the highest worship Mars, the Egyptians, Isis, the Moors, Iuba, the Macedonians, Cabrius, the Carthaginians, Uranus, the Latines, Faunus, the Romans, Quirinus, and Sabines, Sangus, the Athenians, Minerva, Samos, Juno, Paphos, Venus, Lemnos, Vulcan, Naxos, Bacchus, Delphos, Apollo, and as Ovid sings in his Phasti, Athens do Pallas, Crete, Dian implore, the island Lemnos, Vulcan doth adore, the Spartans Juno. The Carthaginians and Leucadanians did worship Saturn, Crete, Piraeus, Homali, Ida, Elis, and Libya, Jupiter, where was his oracle, Epirus, Latium, Cnidus, Lycia, Pisa, Macedonia, Mars, the Thermodonians, Scythians, and Thracia. The sun, the Scythians, did worship only one god, sacrificing an horse to him. The same also the Heliopolitans and Assyrians did worship, and under the name of Apollo, the Rhodians, Hyperboreans, and Milesians, and the mountains, Parnassus, Phasaelus, Cynthus, Socrates, were holy to him, and the islands, Delos, Claros, Tenedos, and Maloi, a place in the isle Lesbos, and the Grenian grove or town, beside the cities Patara, Crisa, Terapnus, Syra, Delphos, Arafina, and Trosi, Tagaira, also Thebes, the island Naxos, Nice, a city of Arabia, Calitoros, a river of Paphlagonia, were consecrated to him under the name of Bacchus and Dionysus, also Parnassus and Cytheros, mountains of Boeotia, in which every second year by course the feasts, Bacchanalia, were kept. Also the Thermaritans, a people neighbors to the Hyrcanians, did worship Bacchus with their own ceremonies. The Assyrians, first of all, introduced the worship of Venus, when the Paphians in Cyprus, and Phoenicians, and Cytherians, whom, as Aegeus reports, the Athenians followed, amongst the Lacedaemonians. Venus, Armatha, was worshipped at Delphos, Venus Epitibia. She was also adored of the Coans, and in Amathus, an island of the Aegean Sea, and in Memphis, a city of Egypt, and in Cnido, and in Sicilia, and the Idalian Grove, and the city Hypeppa, and Aris, a mountain of Sicilia, and in Caledonia, Cyrene, and Samos. And no deity of the old gods, Aristotle being witness, is reported to have been worshipped with greater ceremonies, and in more places. The French did especially worship Mercury, calling him Teutates. So also the Arcadians, Hermopolites, Egyptians, and Memphites. The Scythians about Mount Taurus did worship the moon, under the name of Diana, and in Ephesus she had the most stately temple, and in Mycenae, after the death of Theontes, king of Taurica, her image being stolen away by Iphigenia and Orestes, she was worshipped nigh Aricia. The rite of ceremonies being changed, she was worshipped likewise by the Magnesians, a people of Thessalia, and in Pisa, a city of Achaia, and in Tibur, and the Aventium, a Roman hill, and in Perga, a city of Pamphylia, and in Argus, in the kingdom of Attica. And the Cantian people are reported to have worshipped the moon under the masculine sex. There were also other places consecrated to other deities, as to Pallas, who is called Minerva, were consecrated Athens, the mountains Piraeus, Aracynthus, the river Tritons, and Alcomenium, a city of Boeotia, and Neo, one of the islands of the Cyclades. The holy places of Ceres are Eleusis, Attica, Enna, and Catana, cities of Sicilia, and Mount Etna. The chief worship of Vulcan was in the island of Lemnos, and in Imbris, an island of Thracia, and Thracia, an island consecrated to Vulcan, and also Sicilia. Vesta was the goddess of the Trojans, whom runaway Aeneas carried into Italy, and to her are given the Pharesians, Idea, and Dindymus, mountains of Phrygia, and Rheatum, a city of Umbria, and also the mountain Berecynthus, and Pessinuntium, a city of Phrygia. The cities Carthage, Procena, Arhos, and Mycena worship Juno, also the island Samos, and the people of Phalacia. Orchestus, a city of Boeotia, and Tanatus, a promontory of Laconia, were consecrated to Neptune, and the Tresnian nation and city were under the protection of Neptune. Of this sort, therefore, were the gods of the nations, which did rule and govern them, which Moses himself in Deuteronomy calls gods of the earth, to which all nations were attributed, not signifying others than the heavenly stars and their souls. Chapter 15. What our theologians think concerning the celestial souls. That the heavens and the heavenly bodies are animated with certain divine souls is not only the opinion of poets and philosophers, but also the assertion of the sacred scriptures and the Catholics, for Ecclesiastes also describes the soul of heaven, and Jerome upon same expressly confesses it. In like manner, Origen, in his Book of Principles, seems to think that celestial bodies are animated, because they are said to receive commands from God, which is only agreeable to a reasonable nature. For it is written, I have enjoined a command on all the stars. Moreover, Job seems to have fully granted that the stars are not free from the stain of sin. For there we read, the stars are also not clean in his sight, which cannot verily be referred to the brightness of their bodies. Moreover, that the celestial bodies are animated, even Eusebius and Pamphilian thought, and also Augustine in his Enchiridion. But of the latter writers, Albertus Magnus in his Book of Four Co-Equals, and Thomas Aquinas in his Book of Spiritual Creatures, and John Scott upon the second of the sentences. To these the most learned Cardinal Niche, Cusanus, may be added. Moreover, Aurelius himself in a strong disputation doth convince these things, who moreover thinks it not strange that the heavenly bodies are worshipped with the worship of Dulia, and that their suffrages and helps are implored, to whom also Thomas himself consented, unless the occasion of idolatry should hinder the rite. Moreover, Plotinus maintained that they know our wishes and hear them. But if anyone should contradict these and account them sacrilegious tenets, let them hear Augustine in his Enchiridion, and in his Book of Retractions, and Thomas in the second book against the Gentiles, and in his Quodlibets, and Scotus upon the sentences, and Guilemius Paracinius in his Sum of the Universe, who unanimously answer that to say the heavenly bodies are animated or inanimated, nothing belong to the Catholic faith. Therefore, although it seems to many ridiculous that the souls themselves be placed in the spheres and stars, and as it were the gods of the nations, every one doth govern his regions, cities, tribes, people, nations, and tongues, yet it will not seem strange to those who rightly understand it. Chapter 16. Of intelligences and spirits, and of the threefold kind of them, and of their diverse names, and of infernal and subterraneal spirits. Now consequently, we must discourse of intelligences, spirits, and angels. An intelligence is an intelligible substance, free from all gross and putrefying mass of a body, immortal, insensible, assisting all, having influence over all, and the nature of all intelligences, spirits, and angels is the same. But I call angels here, not those whom we usually call devils, but spirits, so called from the propriety of the word, as it were, knowing, understanding, and wise. But of these, according to the tradition of the magicians, there are three kinds, the first of which they call supercelestial, and minds altogether separated from a body, and as it were intellectual spheres, worshipping the one only God, as it were their most firm and stable unity or center. Therefore, they even call them gods, by reason of a certain participation of the divinity, for they are always full of God, and overwhelmed with the divine nectar. These are only about God, and rule not the bodies of the world. Neither are they fitted for the government of inferior things, but infuse the light received from God unto the inferior orders, and distribute every one's duty to all of them. The celestial intelligences do next follow these in the second order, which they call worldly angels, these being appointed besides the divine worship for the spheres of the world, and for the government of every heaven and star, whence they are divided into so many orders, as there are heavens in the world, and as there are stars in the heavens. And they called those Saturnine, who rule the heaven of Saturn, and Saturn himself; others Jovial, who rule the heaven of Jupiter, and Jupiter himself. And in like manner they name diverse angels as well, for the name as the virtue of the other stars. And because the old astrologers did maintain 55 motions, therefore they invented so many intelligences, or angels. They placed also in the starry heaven angels who might rule the signs, triplicities, deacons, quinaries, degrees, and stars. For although the school of the Peripatetics assign one only intelligence to each of the orbs of the stars, yet seeing every star and small part of the heaven hath its proper and different power and influence, it is necessary that it also have the ruling intelligence, which may confer power and operate. Therefore, they have established 12 princes of the angels, which rule the 12 signs of the zodiac, and 36, which may rule the so many deacons, and 72, which may rule the so many quinaries of heaven, and the tongues of men and the nations, and 4, which may rule the triplicities and elements, and 7 governors of the whole world, according to the 7 planets, and they have given to all of them names and seals, which they call characters, and used them in their invocations, incantations, and carvings, describing them in the instruments of their operations, images, plates, glasses, rings, papers, wax lights, and such like. And if at any time they did operate for the sun, they did invocate by the name of the sun, and by the names of the solar angels, and so of the rest. Thirdly, they established angels as ministers for the disposing of those things which are below, which Origen calls certain invisible powers, to the which those things which are on earth are committed to be disposed of. For sometimes they being visible to none do direct our journeys, and all our businesses, are oft present at battles, and by secret helps do give the desired success to their friends, for they are said that at their pleasures they can procure prosperity and inflict adversity. In like manner they distribute these into more orders, so as some are fiery, some watery, some aerial, some terrestrial, which 4 species of angels are computed according to the 4 powers of the celestial souls, viz., the mind, reason, imagination, and the vivifying and moving nature, Hence, the fiery follow the mind of the celestial souls, whence they concur to the contemplation of more sublime things. But the aerial follow the reason, and favor the rational faculty, and after a certain manner separate it from the sensitive and vegetative. Therefore, it served for an active life, as the fiery for a contemplative, but the watery, following the imagination, serve for a voluptuous life. The earthly, following nature, favor vegetable nature. Moreover, they distinguish also this kind of angels into saturnine and jovial, according to the names of the stars and the heavens. Further, some are oriental, some occidental, some meridional, some septentrional. Moreover, there is no part of the world destitute of the proper assistance of these angels, not because they are there alone, but because they reign there especially, for they are everywhere, although some especially operate and have their influence in this place, some elsewhere. Neither truly are these things to be understood, as though they were subject to the influences of the stars, but as they have correspondence with the heaven above the world, from whence especially all things are directed, and to the which all things ought to be conformable. Whence, as these angels are appointed for diverse stars, so also for diverse places and times, not that they are limited by time or place, neither by the bodies which they are appointed to govern, but because the order of wisdom hath so decreed, therefore they favor more, and patronize those bodies, places, times, stars. So they have called some diurnal, some nocturnal, other meridional. In like manner, some are called woodmen, some mountaineers, some fieldsmen, some domestics. Hence the gods of the woods, country gods, satyrs, familiars, fairies of the mountains, fairies of the woods, nymphs of the sea, the Naiades, Nereides, Dryades, Pyrides, Hamadryades, Potamides, Hynides, Agapti, Pallis, Periades, Dodane, Phenelae, Lavarnae, Pare, Muses, Aeonides, Castellides, Helicondes, Pegasides, Meonades, Phoebiades, Carmenae, the Graces, the Genii, hobgoblins, and such like, whence they call them vulgar superiors, some the demigods and goddesses. Some of these are so familiar and acquainted with men, they are even affected with human perturbations, by whose instruction Plato thinks that men do oftentimes wonderful things, even as by the instruction of men. Some beasts, which are most nigh unto us, as apes, dogs, elephants, do often strange things above their species, and they who have written the chronicles of the Danes and Norwegians do testify that spirits of diverse kinds in those regions are subject to mean commands. Moreover, some of these to be corporeal and mortal, whose bodies are begotten and die, yet to be long-lived, is the opinion of the Egyptians and Platonists, and especially approved by Proclus. Plutarch also, and Demetrius the philosopher, and Aemilianus the rhetorician affirm the same. Therefore, of these spirits of the third kind, as the opinion of the Platonists is, they report that there are so many legions as there are stars in the heaven, and so many spirits in every legion, as in heaven itself stars. But there are, as Athenaeus delivered, who think that the true number of the good spirits is according to the number of men, 99 parts, according to the parable of the 100 sheep. Others think only 9 parts, according to the parable of the 10 groats. Others suppose the number of the angels equal with men, because it is written, He hath appointed the bounds of the people according to the number of the angels of God. And concerning their number, many have written many things. But the latter theologians, following the master of the sentences, Augustine and Gregory, easily resolve themselves, saying that the number of good angels transcends human capacity, to the which, on the contrary, innumerable unclean spirits do correspond, there being so many in the inferior world, as pure spirits in the superior, and some divines affirm that they have received this by revelations. Under these they place a kind of spirits, subterranean or obscure, which the Platonists call angels, that failed, revengers of wickedness and ungodliness, according to the decree of the divine justice, and they call them evil angels and wicked spirits, because they oft annoy and hurt even of their own accords. Of these also they reckon more legions, and in like manner distinguishing them according to the names of the stars and elements, and parts of the world. They do place over them kings, princes, and rulers, and the names of them. Of these, foremost mischievous kings do rule over the others, according to the 4 parts of the world. Under these, many more princes of legions govern, and also many of private offices. Hence, the Gorgones, Statenacte, the Furies, hence Tisiphone, Electo, Megara, Cerberus, they of this kind of spirits. Porphyry said, inhabit a place nigh to the earth, yea, within the earth itself. There is no mischief, which they dare not commit. They have altogether a violent and hurtful custom. Therefore, they very much plot and endeavor violent and sudden mischiefs. And when they make incursions, sometimes they are wont to lie hid, but sometimes to offer open violence, and are very much delighted in all things done wickedly and contentiously. Chapter 17. Of these, according to the opinion of the theologians. But our theologians, together with Dionysius, maintain the 3 distinctions of angels, every one of which they divide into 3 orders. They call these hierarchies, whose choirs, whom Proclus also distinguished by the number 9, they place therefore in the superior hierarchies, seraphim, cherubim, and thrones, as it were supercelestial angels contemplating the order of the divine providence. The first in the goodness of God, the second in the essence of God as the form, the third in wisdom. In the middle hierarchy they place the dominations, virtues, and powers, as it were worldly angels concurring to the government of the world. The first of these command that which the other execute. The second are ministers to the heavens, and sometimes conspire to the working of miracles. The third drive away those things which seem to be able to disturb the divine law. But in the inferior hierarchy they place the principalities, archangels, whom also Iamblichus reckoneth up. These, as ministering spirits, descend to take care of inferior things. The first of these take care of public things, princes and magistrates, providences and kingdoms, everyone those that belong to themselves, when we read in Daniel, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. And Jesus, the son of Sirach, testified that for every nation a ruling angel is appointed, which also Moses, by his song in Deuteronomy, seems to show forth, saying, when the Most High divided the nations, he appointed them bounds according to the number of the angels of God. The second are present at sacred duties, and direct the divine worship about every man, and offer up the prayers and sacrifices of men before the gods. The third dispose every smaller matter, and to each thing each one is a preserver. There are also of these who afford virtues to the least plants and stones, and to all inferior things, to whom many things are common with God, many with men, and they are mediating ministers. But Athanasius, besides thrones, cherubims, and seraphims, who are next to God, and magnify him incessantly with hymns and continual praises, praying for our salvation, names the other orders, which by a common name he calls the militia of heaven. The first of these is the doctrinal order, of the which he was, who spoke to Daniel, saying, Come, that I may teach thee what shall come to the people in the last days. Then there is the tutelar order, of the which we read also in Daniel. Behold, Michael, one of the princes, cometh to my help. And there, in that time, shall rise up Michael, a great prince, who stands for the sons of thy people. Of this order was that Raphael also, who carried forth and brought back Tobiah the younger. After this is the procuratory order, of the which mention is made in Job, where we read, If the angel shall speak for him, we will entreat the Lord, and the Lord will be pleased with him. And of the same order is expounded also that which is written in the 16th chapter of Ecclesiasticus about the end. The works of the Lord have been made by the appointment from the beginning, and he hath distributed their portions from the time they have been made. He hath adorned their works forever. They have not hungered, nor been wearied, and have not desisted from their works. None of them shall oppress his neighbor, even forever. The ministerial order follows, of the which Paul to the Hebrews said, Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth for them who shall be heirs of salvation? After these is the auxiliary order, of the which we read in Essay, The angels of the Lord went forth and slew in the tent of the Syrians 185,000. The receptory order of the souls follows this, of which we read in Luke, The soul of Lazarus was carried by angels into the bosom of Abraham. And there we are taught that we should make to ourselves friends of the unrighteous mammon, that we may be received into eternal tabernacles. Moreover, there is the order of the assistants, of which we read in Zachary. These are the two sons of the oil splendor, who assist the ruler of the whole earth. But the theologians of the Hebrews do otherwise number and call these orders, for in the highest place are those which they call note. In the remaining lines of this chapter, there are several words written in Hebrew. For this recording, I will reference them as this. You can view the original text at midwestcovencast.com. This, that is, creatures of sanctity, or by the which God, this, gives the gift of being. In the second place, succeed or phanium, this, that is, forms or wheels, by the which God, this, distinguishes the chaos. In the third place are Aralim, this, great, strong, and mighty, angels, by the which Jehovah, Elohim pronounced of Jehovah, joined with he, this, administers from the liquid matter. In the fourth place are Hasmalim, this, by which this, God framed the effigies of bodies. The fifth order is Seraphim, this, by the which God Elohim Gabor, this, draws forth the elements. The sixth is Malachim, this, that is, of angels, by the which God El-Hoa, this, produces metals. The seventh, Elohim, this, that is the gods, by the which God Jehovah Sabaoth, this, produces vegetables. The eighth, Beni Elohim, this, that is the sons of God, by the which God Elohim Sabaoth, this, procreates animals. The ninth and lowest cherubim, this, by the which God Sadai, this, creates mankind. Under these is the order Animasticus, called Isim, this, that is nobles, strong men, or blessed, by the which God, Adonai, this, bestowed prophecies. Chapter 18. Of the orders of evil spirits, and their fall and diverse natures. There are some of the school of the theologians who distribute the evil spirits into 9 degrees, as contrary to the 9 orders of the angels. Therefore, the first of these are those which are called false gods, who, usurping the name of God, would be worshipped for gods, and require sacrifices and adorations, as that devil who said to Christ, If thou wilt fall down and worship me, I will give thee all these things, showing him all the kingdoms of the world. And the prince of these is he who said, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and will be like to the Most High, who is therefore called Beelzebub. That is, an old god. In the second place follows the spirits of lies, of which sort was he who went forth, and was a lying spirit in the mouth of the prophets of Achab. And the prince of these is the serpent Pytho, from whence Apollo is called Pythias, and that woman a witch in Samuel, and other in the gospel, who had Pytho in their belly. Therefore this kind of devils joins himself to the oracles, and deludes men by divinations and predictions, so that he may deceive. In the third order are the vessels of iniquity, which are also called the vessels of wrath. These are the inventors of evil things, and of all wicked arts, as in Plato, that devil Theodus, who taught cards and dice, for all wickedness, malice, and deformity proceeds from these, of the which in Genesis, in the benedictions of Simeon and Levi, Jacob said, Vessels of iniquity are in their habitations. Into their council let not my soul come, whom the psalmist calls vessels of death. Isaiah vessels of fury, and Jeremy vessels of wrath, Ezekiel vessels of destroying and slaying, and their prince and Belial, which is interpreted without a yoke or disobedient, a prevaricator and an apostate, of whom Paul of the Corinthians said, "What agreement hath Christ with Belial?" Fourthly, follow the revengers of evil, and their prince is Asmodeus, viz., causing judgment. After these, in the fifth place, come the deluders, who imitate miracles, and serve wicked conjurers and witches, and seduce the people by their miracles, as the serpent seduced Eve. And their prince is Satan, of whom is written in the Revelations, that he seduced the whole world, doing great signs, and causing fire to descend from heaven in the sight of men, seducing the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the signs, which are given him to do. Sixthly, the aerial powers offer themselves. They join themselves to thundering and lightnings corrupting the air, causing pestilences and other evils, in the number of which are the 4 angels of whom the Revelation speaks, to whom it is given to hurt the earth and sea, holding the 4 winds from the 4 corners of the earth, and their prince is called Merim. He is called Meridian, devil, a boiling spirit, a devil raging in the south, whom Paul to the Ephesians calls the prince of the power of this air, and the spirit which works in the children of disobedience. The 7th mansion the Furies possess, which are powers of evil, discords, war, and devastations, whose prince in the Revelations is called in Greek Apollo, in Hebrew Abaddon, that is, destroying and wasting. In the 8th place are the accusers, or the inquisitors, whose prince is Astaroth, that is, a searcher out. In the Greek language is called Diabolos, that is, an accuser or culminator, which in the Revelations is called the accuser of the brethren, accusing them night and day before the face of our God. Moreover, the tempters and ensnarers have the last place, one of which is present with every man, which we therefore call the evil genius, and their prince is Mammon, which is interpreted covetousness. But all unanimously maintain that evil spirits do wander up and down in this inferior world, enraged against all, whom they therefore call devils, of whom Augustine, in his first hook of the incarnation of the word to Janarius, said, concerning the devils and his angels, contrary to virtues, the ecclesiastical preaching hath taught that there are such things, but what they are and how they are, he hath not clear enough expounded. Yet there is this opinion amongst most, that this devil was an angel, and being made an apostate, persuaded very many of the angels to decline with himself, who even unto this day are called his angels. Greece, notwithstanding, thinks not that all these are damned, nor that they are all purposefully evil, but that from the creation of the world, the dispensation of things is ordained by this means, that the tormenting of sinful souls is made over to them. The other theologians say that not any devil was created evil, but that they were driven and cast forth of heaven from the orders of good angels for their pride, whose fall not only our and the Hebrew theologians, but also the Assyrians, Arabians, Egyptians, and Greeks do confirm by their tenets. Pherecydes, the Syrian, describes the fall of the devils, and that Ophis, that is, the devilish serpent, was the head of that rebelling army. Trismegistus sings the same fall in the Pomander, and Homer under the name Araris in his verses, and Plutarch in his speech of usury signifies that Empedocles knew that the fall of the devils was after this manner. The devils also themselves often confess their fall, they therefore being cast forth into the valley of misery. Some that are nigh to us wander up and down in this obscure air. Others inhabit lakes, rivers, and seas. Others the earth, and terrify earthly things, and invade those who dig wells and metals, cause the gapings of the earth, strike together the foundation of mountains, and vex not only men, but also other creatures. Some, being content with laughter and delusion only, do contrive rather to weary men than to hurt them. some heightening themselves to the length of the giant's body, and again shrinking themselves up to the smallness of the pygmies, and changing themselves into diverse forms, do disturb men with vain fear. Others study lies and blasphemies, as we read of one in the 3rd book of Kings, saying, I will go forth and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all the prophets of Achab. But the worst sort of devils are those who lay wait and overthrow passengers in their journeys, and rejoice in wars and effusion of blood, and afflict men with most cruel stripes. We read of such in Matthew, for fear of whom no man durst pass that way. Moreover, the Scripture reckoneth up nocturnal, diurnal, and meridional devils, and describes other spirits of wickedness by diverse names, as we read in Essay of satyrs, screech owls, sirens, storks, owls, and in the Psalms of aspis, basilisks, lions, dragons, and in the Gospel we read of scorpions, and mammon, and the prince of this world and rulers of darkness, of all which Beelzebub is the prince, whom Scripture calls the prince of wickedness. Porphyry said their prince is Serapis, who is also called Pluto by the Greeks, and also Cerberus is chief amongst them. That 3-headed dog, viz., because he is conversant in 3 elements, air, water, and earth, a most pernicious devil. Whence also Proserpina, who can do very much in these 3 elements, is their princess, which she testifies of herself in her answers in these verses. Of threefold nature, I, Lucina fair, the daughter am, sent from above the air, the golden Phoebe am, and with heads trine, who many forms do change, and the trine sign, which I bear with forms of earth, fire, and air, I for black mastiffs of the earth do care. Origen's opinion concerning the devils is, the spirits, who act of their own free will, left the service of God, with their prince the devil. If they began to repent, a little are clothed with human flesh, that further by the repentance after the resurrection, by the same means by the which they came into the flesh, they might at the last return to the vision of God, being then also freed from ethereal and aerial bodies. And then all knees are to be bowed to God of celestial, terrestrial, and inferior things, that God may be all in all. Moreover, Saint Irenaeus approved the opinion of Justine Martyr, who hath said, Satan never durst speak blasphemy against God, before that the Lord came on the earth, because that he knew not as yet his condemnation. But there are many of the devils who are fallen, who hope for their salvation. Very many think by the history of Paul the Hermit, written by Jerome, and reverenced by the Church with canonical hours, also by the legend of Brandon, they are so taught, and even by this argument they maintain that their prayers are heard, that we read in the Gospels that Christ heard the prayers of the devils, and granted that they should enter into the herd of swine. To these also agrees the 71 Psalm, according to our supputation, but according to the supputation of the Hebrews 72, where we read, the Ethiopians shall fall before him, and his enemies lick the dust. There it is read, according to the Hebrew text, they that inhabit the desert shall bend their knees before him, that is, the airy spirits shall adore him, as the Kabbalists affirm. And his enemies shall lick the dust, which they understand of Zazel, and his army, of which we read in Genesis. Dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And elsewhere the prophet said, because the dust of the earth is his bread, hence the Kabbalists think that even some devils shall be saved, which opinion also it is manifest that Origen was of. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Midwest Covencast Presents Weekend Reads. Join us next time as we continue through Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy or magic, Book 3, Ceremonial Magic. To access podcast extras and so much more, you can visit MidwestCovencast.com. Otherwise, I hope you will visit us on social media at Midwest Covencast on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, and at Midwest Coven on Twitter. Until next time, Coven, blessed be.